The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Robert Kiyosaki, the entrepreneur, investor, financial expert, and author of the globally renowned bestseller, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the #1 personal finance book of all time. Robert, you've dedicated your life to challenging the way tens of millions of people around the world think about money and investing. For the last 12 months, you've warned us about the prospect of an economic crash that will be greater than anything we've ever known before, one that will leave many people living in poverty. Recently, we've watched Silicon Valley Bank collapse, then Signature Bank collapse, then Credit Suisse collapse, and we are now hearing of a pending Deutsche Bank collapse. Robert, you've warned us that the bond market is crashing, that inflation is now systemic, and that this contagion will spread into a global banking crisis that will have devastating consequences. Robert, welcome back to London Real.
Well, Brian, thank you. And before I go on, I want to give you a shout out because there's people that are always in your corner. And all these years, you've always been in my corner, and I appreciate that. And that's a very rare quality to have because there's so many times that when a person becomes successful, friends get jealous. And you've always been acknowledging of my success. You've watched me come up and all this. And, it's called the Judas effect. The guy's your friend, but when you get more successful, they stab you in the back. And I've been, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is now 25, 26 years old. And I've had so many friends that stab you in the back. It's just amazing what happens. So I want everybody to know Brian Rose is a true friend. You find somebody like Brian in your corner, you're a very lucky person. So Brian, thank you for all these years of true support and friendship.
Rob, I really appreciate that. I'm quoting you all the time to my students. I'm teaching in my Wealth Academy, my crypto courses, and my investment club. I think I probably quote you every single session I go in because your stuff, it rings true, maybe even more so now than when you wrote that book 27, 28 years ago. So look, I appreciate it. I can never have you on enough times. I always get excited, and all the London Reelers, they love you. So appreciate you being here, and thanks for coming on really on short notice. I mean, you've been in high demand lately. I've seen you on Fox. I've seen you on the major financial programs because, everyone's looking to you to try to explain this because you've been calling this for 5, 10, 15 years. I just want to call out a couple things that have just shocked me, Robert. As you know, I worked in the highest levels of international finance for 15 years. I worked on Wall Street, I worked in Chicago, and I worked here in London for 10 years in the credit markets and interest rate markets. Robert, 2 of my top clients when I worked here in the city of London, that's what they call Wall Street here, were the massive global banks. 2 of my top derivative clients were Credit Suisse and Deutsche Bank, right? These were guys that paid me millions and millions of dollars in fees over the years. Guys became good friends of mine. And it's really hard to watch a bank like Credit Suisse, its equity value go to zero. Good friends of mine, my former clients, they were paid in equity. And I'm really, I don't want to text them because, I don't want them to come back and say, Brian, I've also lost all of my life savings. And now to hear Deutsche Bank, Deutsche Bank is considered the creme de la creme of European banks. When I was in the city, it was probably the top European bank when it came to derivatives, to new issuance, to everything. And to think that potentially that equity is going to zero, it's mind-boggling. And so I want to get your thoughts on all of this, including what you've seen stateside with Silicon Valley Bank. Man, 2 weeks ago, that was high drama, and Signature Bank and the rest. Robert, What's your take on this latest development of the crisis you've been calling for at least a decade?
Well, I'm going to promote myself here. This is Rich Dad's Prophecy. Came out in 2013. And I said why the biggest stock market crash in history is still coming and how you can prepare and profit from it. So this was 2013, but I just watched what happened after 2008. And, that was a repo market crash. All these crashes were happening. But the average person without financial education, unlike you and myself, has no idea what's going on. And going a long way back in 1965, I read this book here called The Communist Manifesto. It's only like 50 pages, but it's one of the most influential books in history. I hope someday I can write a book as powerful as this one. But the Communist Manifesto is the manifesto of academics. And I hate to say that because that's a story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I went to military school in New York, and my economics teacher had me read this book here. And I go, why are we studying him when we studied Keynes or, Malthus or those guys or Ricardo? He says, because this guy here, Marx and Engels, they're the most powerful economists in the world. So in 1965, I was 18 years old in New York City. I came from Hawaii all the way to New York to read this book here. And I go, holy Jesus. My family are communists. Now, it doesn't mean they're bad people, Brian. This is where I get my ass in trouble. You call somebody a communist, and I'm a Marine too. Marines, you don't take the word communist lightly because you shoot them. So I spent two tours in Vietnam as a Marine pilot. And so when I read this book here, I went, oh my God, communism is like Christianity or Buddhism or Mormonism, whatever you want to call it. It's communism or economics is an economic religion. If you can understand that. So when I read this book here, it's only like 50 pages. I'm like, oh my God, my family communists. That's like saying, oh my God, I just found out my family are Mormons. Do you know what I mean? And you know how goofy it is here in America is my friends are Mormons, but they're treated like they're communists. So that's human nature is what I'm getting at, Brian. You know what I mean? If somebody is unlike you, we tend to want to kill them. So I read this book here and I went, oh my God, what's happening? We're teaching communism to our kids. So let me just read one, what Marx says. The abolition, the number one aim of communism is the abolition of private property. Okay, that's number one. Number two was taxation. A heavy or progressive income tax is necessary for the spread of communism. So I watch what person does, not what they say. So this guy, Joe Biden, right now, he just hired 87,000 new IRS Internal Revenues agents. That man, by his actions, maybe not in his, I don't think he's got a mind left anyway, but anyway, he and I are the same age. And I act like him sometimes. But anyway, he hired 87,000 new IRS Internal Revenue agents. They're going after our money via communism. But the average American doesn't know that because they think, oh, I must pay my taxes. But if you look at history, and you and I are both Americans, America was founded as a tax-free nation. Yeah. It was called the Boston Tea Party, was it 1773? That was the foundation of America. And then these Nazis, communists, fascists get in there and they start teaching, oh, you should pay your taxes. I'm going, that's not what the Constitution says. Do you know what I mean? And so our problem, Brian, is in education. So that's why I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I don't hate my family. I respect them. Like my sister is a Buddhist nun. She could try to convert me to Buddhism, but as I'm a Marine, we kill Buddhists, unfortunately. But, we all come from different philosophies. And I think the word that's missing today is respect for other people's philosophies, but also as a respect for our education. What are our schools teaching kids today?
Yeah.
Wokeism, gender identity is us, but no, what the heck are we teaching? Black Lives Matter? Well, what about all lives matter? Why don't we teach them that? Do you know what I mean?
I
I'm
want to
sick
get
of
in, I want to get into the school stuff, definitely. But you said something in one of those interviews recently, Robert, that really hit home for me. And it has to do with the themes you just mentioned. You said they're trying to centralize our banking system. And when I
Yes.
heard you say that, I got chills in my spine because look what they're doing. They took all these local, basically SMEs, that's the way banks started off, these local businesses that serve their local communities,
Right.
in a way that would make a profit. Okay, that's what they did. And now they're centralizing them. What else is centralized? Well, China is centralized. When you start to centralize something, it feels like you take away that capitalist
Right.
mindset, and then all
Right.
the incentive structures go. Is that what you meant when you said that?
Absolutely. Because when I read this book here, I went, oh my God, what is a central bank? What is the Federal Reserve Bank of America but a central bank? What is the Bank of England? A central bank. What is the ECB, European Central Bank? They're Marxist organizations. They're Marxist organizations. At the core of it, they're Marxist. It used to be a bank was just a small little bunch of guys getting around, they lend money out. And,
Yeah.
in religion, I wasn't very religious, but I was raised a Christian. They have a picture of Jesus chasing out the bankers. That should have been a lesson for everybody. If Jesus was kicking all these bankers, maybe we should too.
But like you said, these started off as like, mom and pop institutions that would help the economy grow,
Yes.
that would help people own more property, right? My grandparents, they went west when their families and ancestors got to America. One of them became a cattle rancher right not far from you in Arizona. One of them became a cotton farmer not far from you in Arizona. And they were able to do that because people lent them money to build their businesses. Now, when Silicon Valley Bank gets taken over, Signature Bank gets taken over, they centralize it, which means it goes back to those power structures that are ultimately pushing these, like you say, Marxist ideals, and it's taking us way, way back. And that's what worries you, right?
Oh, well, look, this here is a helicopter gunship. I flew this in Vietnam, went
Yeah.
down 3 times.
That a
And
Huey? A Huey.
yep.
Okay.
And
I fly a Robinson R-22s, right? So we're both pilots.
oh, good for you. Good for you. I went down 3 times in Vietnam. I said, that's enough, man. You only have how many lives? You have 9 lives. I got 6 left. So, but anyway, I was out there killing commies. And I went, oh my God, we should read this book here. So I came back from Vietnam, January 3rd, 1973, 2. I landed in Norton Air Force Base in California. And I got hit with eggs and spit on by all these hippies, these love children. And 69 was Woodstock and all this stuff. The hippies were coming on. I went, holy mackerel. What this guy had said was coming true. Marx said that communism would hit America in 2 stages, or capitalism. Stage 1 happened in 1930 when the Frankfurt School sent teachers to Columbia University, Teachers College. And so that was 1930. That was stage 1. And then stage 2 happened, in my opinion, and is when my friend here, Donald Trump, got taken down by socialist media. What happened to our elections? What happened to our elections? That's communism. As Stalin says, it's not who votes that counts, it's who counts the votes. And so, Brian, I sit here as an American, a veteran, killed a lot of people, good people, in the name of capitalism versus communism. And I come home to get spit on, hit with eggs. Remember those days? I remember I had, Marines had no hair, and all these guys had these, they were in their tranny haircuts and all this stuff. I mean, I don't care who you sleep with. It's none of my business. Do you know what I mean? I don't care if you want to swim with the girls' team. I really don't care. But the girls might care. You know what I mean? Like, what the heck's happening here? But anyway, so I've been fighting it ever since, and we fight via education. So you and I fight via education. That's the most important thing we got. And I know you get attacked, I get attacked. by the very people that are supposed to be promoting freedom of education, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. What's happened to our freedoms? That's what my concern is.
Now, Robert, for a lot of the people that are watching these banks fail, like you said, you and I have a financial education, but a lot of people don't, and they panic, they ask questions, they don't really understand how a bank like Silicon Valley Bank can fail. And again, there were some wide-ranging consequences that I want to get to as well. But like, how do you explain to people, how the banking system works, then how the Fed works, and what do you tell them to do about all this? Is it ultimately down to voting, to education? What do you tell them?
Well, that's why I wrote this book here in 1997. It came out. This book had to be self-published, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because every one of those academic elites running our publishing houses like Simon and Schuster and all that, they turned my book down because they're Marxists. They said, you don't know what you're talking about. I said, what do you mean your house is not an asset? What do you mean savers are losers? What do you mean this? Why do you say you should not pay your taxes? I mean, look at my friend here, Donald, when he ran against Hillary Clinton, she says, Donald, you don't pay taxes. And he laughed at her and he says, that means I'm smart. And again, you go back in history, America fought Mother England in 1773 because of the tax on, I think, tea, the Boston Tea Party. You look at our history. We fight for our freedoms. But today, once the academics, as this book says here in 1930, entered Columbia University, he didn't say this, but that's when the teachers took over the communists took over academics. And then this, my friend here, gets taken down in 2020 in a rigged election. Now I'm going to get censored for that. But in my opinion, just go back to what Stalin said, it's not who votes that counts, who counts the votes. And that's what's going on in our country.
It's interesting what you say about taxation, because I was in Dubai in October last year, and it was really my first time there. I'd been there like 15 years earlier, and I was kind of blown away by this spirit. You can kind of feel it when you're walking around the streets and amongst the people and in the incredible buildings. But it's this tax-free zone where capitalism is promoted, where they have a long-term vision of growth for the country. They're the city of the future. And I pulled out my phone and I was walking through one of those like tunnels, those high walkways, and I recorded a vlog, and I titled it this, Robert. I said, Dubai is what America used to be. That's what I did. It was a spontaneous idea I had in my head. And I was like, here's a place where the government's not trying to stand in your way. They're not trying to stop. They know that they need entrepreneurs to create, to build the future, and they're going to stay out of their way and give them every opportunity possible. And you could feel the excitement. I can only imagine that's what America felt like a couple hundred years ago. And then you go to our supposedly advanced Western democracies and you look at massive taxations. You look at these, like you said, things are going Marxist. You look at these ridiculous social issues. You look at these other things and you're like, well, who's the advanced civilization? It's not us over here in the West, I don't think.
No, and I was in London last night. I should have stayed over and talked to you there, but I was coming back from Romania, and Romania is, in my opinion, if I was going to move to a country, I'd move to Romania. The reason is that they're so capitalistic there, and they're once a Russian satellite.
Yeah,
they know what communism is like, and they fight it. And so, my aunt was a prima ballerina of Paris, and she was from Romania. But also that's where Count Dracula was from. So I'm more like Count Dracula, I think. But anyway, it's, history is worth studying and all this, but America has gone so communist via our academics. That's the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that's why I wrote the book. And I get attacked by my family. He said, how dare you call our family communist? I said, just read this book here.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.